and to banking, and the Jackson Hole event is taking place.
Yeah, this doesn't get a lot of your daily press like announcements on the news. The news about this is largely relegated to the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Reuters, Bloomberg, some of which are Bilderberg players, and that's an incidental comment there, but worth noting. Here's the headline, and I believe this came from Bloomberg. Powell, that's Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, to speak August 25, coming up at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That's where it is. The annual economics symposium. A quick note, it started in 1978 in Kansas City. It was held there at the Kansas City Fed branch. But then a few years after that, they moved it to the Grand Tetons, an especially beautiful area in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This next slide kind of illustrates that. The Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, and it talks about the 2023 Economic Symposium coming up August 24th through 26th. And the title of it is Structural Shifts in the Global Economy. And as that Reuters or Bloomberg article rather noted at the beginning, they're looking a lot at what Powell might say about raising rates again. Here's a sampling. The 2023 outlook, I put the answer to that question is the party line. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will deliver a talk on the economic outlook, as I noted, August 25 at the Central Bankers Confab held each year in Jackson Hole. Sponsored by the Kansas City Fed, and the speech set for 10:05 a.m. Eastern Time. That's, I think, 8:05 a.m. Mountain Time. So he's the first speaker of the day that day. It'll provide a chance to give Powell's latest views on whether more policy tightening will be needed to bring down inflation amid surprisingly strong economic growth, or if enough progress on disinflation, there's an unusual term, has been made to hold rates steadily or steady. And as I've noted in past UK columns, raising rates is not necessarily a way to lower prices. We have to be specific and say price inflation, not simply say inflation. Anyway, moving on a little bit more explanation here. The Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City's Economic Policy Symposium in Jackson Hole is one of the longest standing central bank conferences in the world. It brings together economists, financial market participants, academics, U.S. government representatives, and news media to discuss long-term policies of mutual concern. And a quick footnote is the media is not there, the selected media, to really so much as cover it as to a degree, take part, which is really improper. Anyway,
yeah, but that's sorry, Mark, just to say that's very much in the mold of Bilderberg then.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. And you'd have to be very select in the media to achieve that result. Anyway, to foster the open discussion that the symposium is known for, here we go. Attendees are selected based on each year's topic with consideration for diversity in region, background, and industry. In a typical year, about 120 people attend, consisting of the following groups. A key feature of the event is the thoughtful discussion that takes place among the participants. This is very reminiscent of Bilderberg. Given the participants and the topics being discussed, there's substantial interest in the symposium. However, to help foster the open discussion that's been so critical to the symposium's success, attendance at the event is limited. So if you want open discussion, you have to have fewer people, which sounds a little counterintuitive. Anyway, this is a chart that kind of shows the relative importance and the overall participation. Similarly, although the bank receives numerous requests from media outlets worldwide, press attendance is also limited to a group that is selected to provide transparency to the symposium, but yet not overwhelm or influence the proceedings. All symposium participants, including members of the press, pay a fee to attend. The fees help offset expenses. Interesting there that the organizers don't want to overwhelm or influence the proceedings by having the wrong media there, which is just another way of saying they don't want too many questions being asked and they want the machine to run smoothly. So it is somewhat like Bilderberg there. Now, this is a list. As I mentioned, this whole thing started in 1978 at the Kansas City Fed. This is a list from 1986 up to the present of the different topics. I'll only mention a couple of them. 2000 is quite interesting. If I'm getting this right, let me see, where's that?
Global Economic Integration, Opportunities and Challenges was 2000.
The print is very small from my end. I beg your pardon. Yeah, global integration, opportunities and challenges. Thank you. And that's just one of many. Many of them are easily a cure for insomnia. It's very dry in many areas, but the that will give readers and viewers a overall view that want to check that out and look at that more closely later on. But that just gives you an idea of the topics. Now, Jerome Powell on the 29th of June this year spoke to the Banco de España, a fourth bankers conference in Spain, Madrid, I believe. And he said this: "We cannot take the resilience of the financial system for granted, however. The multiple shocks we have seen over the past year or so, including the extreme volatility in commodity markets following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and of course, surprisingly high and persistent inflation, as well as the associated increase in interest rates, stressed a range of bank and non-bank stressed a range of bank and non-bank financial institutions." That's a little bit of what he had to say. And the next slide comes out of my The Truth Hound blog. And this illustration here, I think, shows the actual relationship between banking and the people and governments. The bankers are the fat cats with the fresh set of clothes, and they're stuffing themselves to the rafters. The government is the servant. Meanwhile, the people are put into peonage. And I think that illustrates it really well. The headline of my article there, I meant to read that headline.
Yeah,
but
okay,
at any rate, yeah, raising interest rates akin to giving patient chemo, which dies first, the inflation or the economy? And I think that's a fair headline. From my truthhound.com article, this is the opening paragraph. When the Federal Reserve on July 26 approved a widely expected interest rate hike that moved benchmark borrowing costs to their highest level in more than 22 years, the 11th rate increase since the Fed launched its fight against inflation in March of 22, it continued peddling the notion that price inflation is an external force over which the Fed has no direct control. Price inflation is referred to as if it's an earthquake or a thunderstorm, or perhaps a capricious dragon bent on destruction, patiently stewing away in its lair, just waiting to pounce. And a couple slides ago, that's the way Jerome Powell was talking. He talked about tremors. He talked about shocks, as if the Fed's policies, whether it's the money printing side of it or imposing costs, which is the cost push side of inflation, regardless of which kind of inflation it is, the Fed wants to act as if it has no causative factor in all this. Now, this is a quote from Dr. Oliver Haydorn, an acquaintance of mine. He wrote the book Social Credit Economics, not to be confused with the Chinese system. He noted the following: basically, the raising of interest rates to fight inflation is akin to using chemotherapy to treat cancer in allopathic medicine. Just as chemotherapy involves injecting someone with poison in the hope that it will kill the cancer before it kills the patient, so too, increasing interest rates sickens the economy. And that sickening of the economy can be businesses closing, businesses hoped for that never started up, businesses wanting to expand that instead contract or at least don't expand, and lots of losses. So the Fed is going to do a lot of damage in its one-size-fits-all approach to controlling inflation. So a lot of eyes will be on Jerome Powell. I'll have a lot more about this, Mike, after he actually gives his speech. And we'll see how open the organizers of the conference are with releasing minutes, releasing press releases, speech excerpts. We'll dissect it a little bit more later. But the main thing to look out for now is the deceptive language of the Fed going into this, acting as if the price inflation that it has a hand in causing is as impersonal and distant as an earthquake, or you might say a wildfire. So lots of deception there, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. And David,